Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. Today we've got a showdown between bold, gold, full-strap sports complications from great Geneva brands. It's Patek Philippe versus Rolex. Today on Watchbox Reviews, let us start with the Patek Philippe Aquanaut. We are in the moment of the Patek Philippe Nautilus. As a hobby, as a collector's market, that is the theme of our times. That said, the simple 5164 launched in 2011 might be the only Patek Philippe sports watch you'll ever need. A practical complication, a wearable size, loomed, automatic, plenty of water resistance, and in rose gold, far warmer than the standard 5164A. Now throw the watch on the wrist and you can see this watch has not aged a day since 2011. A lot of folks felt as though the Aquanaut would perpetually live in the shadow of the Nautilus, and that seemed true until the arrival of the dual time, or as Patek Philippe calls it, the travel time in 2011. Now on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, you can see the watch is fairly easy to wear. 40.8 millimeters is the bare measurement, and it's a thin timepiece. At 10.4 millimeters thick, considerably less so than the Daytona. From lug to lug, you're going to measure this watch at 47.3 millimeters, although truth be told, it's a bit broader than that because of the rigid flare of the conforming profile strap. Patek Philippe turns itself in contortions, trying to describe this strap as something other than rubber, an advanced technical polymer, a composite. You know what? Let's just go with that. A composite. It's a composite of various polymers. You can see it features a geosphere cut as it long has, and we'll throw it one more time on my wrist just so you get a sense of it in proportion on a 16 centimeter circumference wrist. A comfortable watch, but again, one that wears a little bit larger than its size because of the way the strap flares. So you can see it's narrow across the lug profile, but it does wear more like a 50 millimeter lug-to-lug watch. The strap is very comfortable. This strap, by any name, is nicely evacuated on the underside to let the wrist breathe, as well as to create a more pliant material. You can see there are many pre-scored marks, allowing you to cut the strap on both sides to length. The clasp itself is a big upgrade over what you get on a Nautilus, as it features a double folding lock with a Calatrava cross external, and then a twin trigger release. You can see internally, the chassis of the clasp doubles as the spring. It's twin trigger, all of high polish, plenty of rose gold provided. Rolling over to the case profile, you can see that there's a little bit more nuance as well as hand-finished detail than you'll find on the Daytona. A combination of satin and polish. You can see it has a traditional shear guard style crown guard structure, but also note that the shear guards themselves with their polished ends are slightly angled inward. Now you can see the lugs have a little bit of a curvature to them. They're not all angles, and the same is true of the flanks of the case, where you can see that the travel time adjusters have been handsomely rendered to effectively match the wing-like form of the Patek Philippe standard sports watch profile. We see it on the Aquanaut as well as on the original Nautilus. Now the timepiece has a bezel, again inspired by the Nautilus but not directly derivative. You can see the crystal and the bezel have a sort of rounded off polygonal form, satin on the top, polished on the flanks. And it's the dial where this watch pulls out a decisive margin over its stainless steel counterpart in the Patek catalog. You can see that the dial has not just a gradient fade from a sort of brown bronze at center, but it also features a metallic tinge that you don't find on the standard 5164A. That watch is a little bit more drab and staid. This one is dynamic, shimmering, and luminescent, and that's before we get to the lume. Rose gold hands, as you can see, rose gold vertically arrayed Arabic numerals and white on brown black print. You can see there's a local and a home time indicator, so you have AM, PM, that is day-night, for both the local and the home time. The local time is the time displayed by the solid hands and coordinated with the date. The home time is the time where you are not. It is coordinated with the skeleton hour hand, and the watch features Patek Philippe's caliber 324. The 324 base with center seconds and the travel time adjusted in 6 positions. Free-sprung Gyromax style Patek Philippe balance. Let's turn it all over so you can see it more easily. You can see that it features a Spiromax silicon anti-magnetic hairspring, ceramic rotor bearings, unidirectional winding, 35 to 45 hour power reserve, and of course Patek attests to the accuracy -3 + 2 seconds a day or better. All of this water resistant down to 120 meters and blessed with the wonderful Patek Philippe travel time system that allows you to clean up the dial when you need not. 2 time zones. Now let's jump over to the Daytona. So this watch in rose gold is emblematic of a model launched in 2011, better known in steel, but I feel richer and more endearing in rose gold. The Daytona, on the other hand, is generally associated with stainless steel, and I would go so far as to say that this timepiece, though rarely seen on an Oysterflex strap in yellow gold, is probably underrated. That's right, an underrated Rolex Daytona model, but the one I find most appealing. Now this watch debuted back in 2007. The year after the steel ceramic, we got the yellow gold with the Cerachrom bezel. It's 40 millimeters, so on paper it's not that different in size from the Patek Philippe. And I have to admit that on the wrist they do wear quite similar. You can see my wrist 16 centimeters, and the watch distinguished by a few features. First, the thickness, though it's not immediately evident. This is 12.2 millimeters thick compared to 10.4 of the Aquanaut, so almost 2 millimeters of difference in thickness. That is a big deal, although because of the cupped case back, it sits a little bit lower than that on the wrist. Now the timepiece is 40 millimeters, but that's not including the crown guard, chronograph pushers, or the crown. From lug to lug, the watch is fairly close to the Aquanaut at 47.7 millimeters, and the timepiece features a fully pivoted strap architecture, and this is where it starts setting itself apart. As you can see, the strap, and by the way, the spacing between the horns is 20 millimeters. The strap pulls straight down, and truth be told, Oysterflex is not a strap. It is a continuous band of titanium alloy that runs straight through the rubber cladding, so the sheath on the outside gives it the appearance of a strap and the feel of a strap, but you cannot tear it through or snap it. I'll also appreciate the fact that that fit, because you can pull the strap straight down, starts off with a lead on the Aquanaut, but it pads its lead with, well, padding, as there is a bellows system on the underside of the Oysterflex strap bracelet that allows the various sizes, as you cannot cut the bracelet itself, to cinch closer to the wrist, so you only need to get close with fit in order to get a secure and comfortable mounting on your wrist. The clasp is more substantial and better overall than what Patek Philippe offers. First, there's a double locking system. You're getting more gold here. There is the clamshell locking system, and you can see there's both satin and polish about the clasp, and then there is a lift lock system. You can see the beak and the hook internally, so you have a second locking mechanism. You actually can't pull it open like that. So internally, all of high polish, the double locking system, compounded by the utility. Let's get real close here. Get this back in focus. The utility of the EasyLink tool-free adjustment system. It's the equivalent of taking in or taking out 5 millimeters of length. And then you can see there are little tracks leading into 3 drilled divots that allow you to change the anchoring point of the strap inside the clasp. Remember, Oysterflex, it's a bracelet, so you can't cut it. There's metal straight through. I do like the fact that there is a character line pattern that gives definition to the strap on its top, and in many ways even emulates the taper and the profile of an Oyster bracelet. I think that has a leg up on the somewhat indistinct and aging geosphere pattern on the Aquanaut. So inside the Rolex, there's a 3-day power reserve automatic winding Rolex manufacturer caliber 4130, 44 jewels, full balance bridge, free sprung index for shock protection, overcoil hairspring, a handmade Breguet overcoil, allowing the watch to be tested in 6 positions at Rolex after it receives its COSC chronometer certification. Rolex then cases up that chronometer certified movement and attests that it will run better than COSC to -2 + 2 seconds a day or less. That's the Rolex superlative chronometer guarantee, and Rolex backs it with a 5-year warranty to 2 on the Patek. Vertical clutch and column wheel chronograph, 100 meters water resistant, and as you can see, a loomed dial in a sensational sunburst gold. It is not champagne, it is richly yellow gold with blackened indices, blackened registers, and a lovely white on black print for the registers with the signature red Daytona script. Of course, the timepiece, quite tough and hallowed on the track down in Florida, Daytona Motor Speedway, the official winner's gift, albeit not in yellow gold, for the winner of the 24-hour Enduro each year in each car in each class. Now, let's talk about advantages, starting with the Patek Philippe. There are a few that stand out, and they're intuitive. First, this is a hand-finished movement. While it is not as extensively hand-finished as other Patek Philippe calibers, and macro-level inspection will confirm this, it's still darn good. And I have to say, all things considered, it has no competition from the Daytona's caliber. This is a largely hand-finished movement, whereas the Daytona is almost entirely mechanically finished. And while the Rolex 4130 looks good for a modern Rolex caliber, nevertheless, it cannot hold a candle to this. There's also more detailing and hand finishing about the Patek Philippe case, and that is less than you'll get on a Nautilus, but we're not comparing the Aquanaut to a Nautilus here, so advantage Aquanaut. Hand-finished movement in case. Second, 120 meters versus 100 meters of water resistance. Is it a lot? No, but again, advantage Aquanaut. Let's talk about the display case back. Rolex may have started to clean up its movement finishing with the Daytona caliber that bowed in 2000, but regardless, you can't even see the Rolex movement, so it's out of the running. Display case back and no compromise in watertight integrity or thickness, which leads me to another advantage. Thinner and more compatible with dress attire. I'll also mention that though some folks consider cuttable straps a pet peeve, when you only have half a dozen Oysterflex size options, you start to consider the merits of a cuttable strap that will give you a millimetrically precise fit. It has its advantages, most notably precision and flexibility. It's also important to remember that a date function, though these are distinct complications, a chronograph and a dual time, the date function of the Patek Philippe adds another dimension of complication and functionality, and I do find myself consulting the date on my watches. So while only you can decide whether a dual time or a chronograph is more appropriate for you, everyone can agree that if we're simply counting features, advantage Aquanaut. Finally, superior lume as well as daytime legibility. You'll make the call during the lume shot, but I find this watch is more legible day or night, and after all, we still use our watches to tell the time. The gold on gold hands of the Rolex don't get it done by day, and these thin slivers of lume don't get it done by night. Not a huge knock, as you can still read the watch. The Patek is just better. Now let's talk about the Rolex. First, superior clasp. You're getting more precious metal, which is always nice. Second, it is a more intricate and secure mechanism with the double locking system offering additional peace of mind on the wrist. You have the 3 internal drilled divots and you have the Easy Link system. You can also see that there is an elaborate system built in for the lift lock release, so in terms of engineering, substance, and I would say even finish, advantage Rolex clasp. Let's talk about value. You can buy this watch new for $27,500. If you want to buy the Aquanaut new, it is $53,070, and I can guarantee you that the price premium is not all down to the movement finishing that is invested. A lot of that is a Patek Philippe premium. The Rolex forces you to suffer no degradation in brand equity, as Rolex is as good as it gets, and quite literally here, as good as gold. If you were to buy this watch pre-owned, $29,000 to $30,000 box and papers, whereas the Patek Philippe becomes an improbable proposition unless you're willing to pay $72,000 to $74,000 to buy one of these pre-owned. So whether buying new or used, better value in the Rolex. I should also mention that Rolex backs its watch with a 5-year warranty versus 2 for the Patek. That's unacceptable in this day and age, and it needs to change, like tomorrow. Okay, Rolex. I'll also mention that they offer more precision. The movement has a few advantages here. With the full balance bridge and the free sprung index, it's inherently more shock resistant. 72-hour power reserve versus 35 to 40, advantage Rolex. And Rolex assures you of -2 + 2 seconds per day or better, whereas Patek is -3 + 2. And while it doesn't seem like a lot, if you compare them in percentage terms, it's impressive and it is in Rolex's favor. Now let's talk about the ceramic scratch shield over the case. You will scratch twice when you scratch this Aquanaut. One scratch on the case and one scratch on your sole. It's an emotional matter, and I happen to like the fact that Rolex almost entirely shields its case with virtually scratch-proof ceramic in the Cerachrom bezel. Advantage Rolex. I'll also mention that the system works. The bellows of the Oysterflex system do allow a very secure and comfortable fit with excellent ventilation under the wrist that's superior from what you get of the shallow hollows of the Patek. Moreover, the Patek and its flaring strap architecture adds unwanted virtual size, whereas the Rolex allows you to pull straight down around a small wrist. And at the end of the day, you also have some adjustment built in with the clasp, and you don't get that with the Aquanaut. So which do I prefer? This is a purely emotional choice, but you don't wear them upside down, folks. Although the movement of the Patek wins my vote of confidence, the emotional vote is in favor of the Rolex. It's the watch I want of the two. This is a timepiece that offers more movement functionality in terms of toughness, accuracy, and power reserve, and that's worth more to me than, for example, the beauty of the Patek. As I said, you don't wear them upside down. So technically accomplished advantage Rolex. And I'll also mention that this is a junior nothing. This factor doesn't bother me as much, but I like the fact that this is considered to be a junior Nautilus, whereas this is co-equally the flagship of Rolex alongside the GMT and the Submariner. It's the winner's gift at the 24 Hours of Daytona. And unlike this Aquanaut design, which, let's face it, in even its most basic form has only been around since 1997, the design of the Daytona has been around since it was called the Le Mans back in 1963. It's permanent, time-tested, iconic, and enduring. It will look just as good in 2063. And I love history, so I love that factor. I also love motorsports, and I can imagine this thing ticking away, jumping the minutes and the hours through the 24-hour race, which I have watched in its entirety. It's probably not the better of the two watches in this comparison. I would say of the two, the finish easily surpasses the Rolex in the case of this Patek Philippe, and I would also argue that in terms of practicality, a dual time is more useful, a date is practical, and of course, a watch that offers a slimmer profile and better legibility would seem to hold many cards advantage over the Rolex, but the Rolex is my emotional choice. There are a few objective traits it has in its favor, and I'm adding Rolex's warranty to that, but above all, if everything were equal, the Rolex would be my emotional choice based on history and aesthetics. Guys, let me know which of these two Geneva icons you would choose as your own. Price or no price as a factor? The Loom Shot, overwhelming advantage Patek Philippe.